The cold was the kind that reached into bones and stayed there. It moved through metal walls, through thin clothes, through skin. It did not care who it touched. It did not care if someone lived or died. Pressed her back against a cargo container and pulled her knees to her chest. Her pale blue skin had turned almost gray from the cold. The two small antennae on her head drooped low, nearly touching her shoulders. She had not eaten in 4 days. She had not slept in 2. Every breath she took made a small cloud in the frozen air. Station was supposed to be a place of opportunity. That is what the refugee ships had told her people when they fled their dying world 3 years ago. That was gone now, burned and broken by a war they did not start and could not stop. Millions of her people scattered across the galaxy like dust in the wind. Some found work. Some found shelter. Most found nothing at all. Was one of the ones who found nothing. She watched the crowds move past her. Tall merchants walked in groups, their scaled skin shining under the station lights. They wore expensive clothes and carried data pads worth more than had ever owned in her life. Traders clicked and buzzed to each other, their multiple arms carrying goods from distant worlds. None of them looked at her. To them, she was part of the station itself, just another piece of trash in the lower decks. An overseer walked toward his storefront. He was large, even for his species, with dark green scales and small eyes that held no warmth. He saw sitting near his door and his face twisted with disgust. "Get away from here," he said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "You are bad for business. No one wants to see your kind begging outside my shop." Tried to stand, but her legs were weak. She had used all her strength just to survive another night. The did not wait. He kicked her hard in the side and she fell into the main corridor. Pain exploded through her body. She gasped and curled into a ball on the cold floor. They went into his shop without looking back. Other aliens walked around like she was a puddle of dirty water. Some made sounds of annoyance. Others pretended they did not see her at all. She lay there for a long moment, waiting for the pain to fade, waiting for the strength to try again. She had to try again. That was all she had left. Slowly pushed herself up. Her side ached where they had kicked her. She could feel something wet on her skin. Blood, maybe. It did not matter. Nothing mattered except finding food, finding shelter, finding someone who would give her a chance. She walked through the corridor and approached a trader who was examining a display of electronics. "Please," said. Her voice was small and rough from the cold. "I can work. I can carry things, clean things, count inventory. I will work for anything, just food, just a warm place to sleep." They looked at her with its compound eyes. For a moment, thought she saw something like consideration in that alien face. Then they made a clicking sound that her translator turned into laughter. Working for me. Your people are weak and slow. I would lose money just feeding you. Go away before I call security." Moved on. She asked a group of females who were shopping for clothes. They ignored her completely, talking among themselves as if she had not spoken at all. She asked a supervisor who was directing workers at a loading dock. He threatened to have her arrested for bothering him. She asked an old male who sat alone at a food stall. He threw a piece of rotten fruit at her and told her to find somewhere to die. The hours passed. The cold grew worse. Hope, which had already been small and weak, began to fade completely. She had heard stories of refugees who simply gave up, who found a quiet corner of a station and waited for the end to come. She had always told herself she would never become one of them. She had promised her mother in those last terrible moments before the evacuation ship separated them that she would survive, that she would live. But promises were easy to make and hard to keep. Leaned against a wall near the main transit hub, watching beings of every species hurry past. They all had somewhere to go. They all had purpose, meaning, value. She had none of these things. She was nothing. She was invisible. Then she saw him. He was walking alone through the crowd, and at first she thought he was a young because of his height. But his skin was smooth, not scaled. He had dark hair on his head and none anywhere else that she could see. His eyes were a warm brown color, and they moved constantly, taking in everything around him. He wore a simple jacket that looked old and well-used, and he carried a bag over one shoulder. Had never seen a being like him before. Then her translator identified his species, and her blood went cold. Human. She had heard stories about humans. They were newcomers to the galaxy, having only joined the greater community a few decades ago. They were said to be unpredictable and emotional. Some stories said they were violent and dangerous. Others said they were weak and foolish. Did not know which stories were true. But she was out of options. She had asked everyone else. She had been rejected by every species on this station. What was one more rejection? What was one more humiliation? She pushed herself off the wall and walked toward the human. Her legs felt like they might collapse at any moment. Her vision blurred at the edges. She was so tired, so cold, so hungry. The human saw her coming. He did not walk faster or turn away. He simply stopped and waited, watching her with those strange brown eyes. Stopped in front of him. She was shaking so badly that she could barely stand. The words she had spoken 100 times today came out of her mouth one more time. "Please, sir, I will work for anything, anything at all. I can carry, I can clean, I can do whatever you need. Please, I just need food, I just need somewhere warm." She waited for the rejection, for the disgust, for the laughter or the threats or the violence. But the human did none of these things. Instead, his face changed. His eyebrows pulled together. His mouth turned down. His eyes moved over her, taking in her thin body, her gray skin, her trembling form, and something shifted in his expression. Had seen many emotions on alien faces. She had seen contempt, hatred, indifference, cruelty, but she did not recognize what she saw on the human's face now. It was not pity. Pity was weak and useless, a feeling that made the one who felt it comfortable while doing nothing for the one who suffered. This was something else, something deeper, something that looked almost like pain. The human reached up and began to remove his jacket, flinched backward, suddenly afraid. What was he doing? Was he going to attack her? Was this some kind of trick? But the human simply held out the jacket toward her. His arms were bare now, and she could see small bumps rising on his skin from the cold. "Here," he said, his voice was softer than she expected. "Put this on, you are freezing." Stared at the jacket. She stared at the human. She did not understand. "Why?" she asked. The word came out as a whisper. The human did not answer. He simply stepped forward and draped the jacket over her shoulders. It was warm, so warm. It smelled like engine oil and something else, something she could not identify. She pulled it tight around herself without thinking. "When did you last eat?" the human asked. Tried to remember. The days blurred together in her mind. "I do not know," she said honestly. The human nodded slowly. Then he looked around the transit hub until his eyes found something. "Come with me," he said. "There is a food stall over there. Let us get you something to eat." He began to walk, stood frozen for a moment, still waiting for the trick, the trap, the cruelty that had to be coming. But the human simply looked back at her and waited. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, followed someone who had not demanded anything from her first. The food stall was small and crowded with aliens of many species. Steam rose from cooking surfaces, and the smell of hot food filled the air. Had walked past this place many times in the last few weeks. She had stood outside and breathed in the smells, trying to trick her stomach into thinking it was full. It had never worked. Now she was sitting at a small table with a bowl of hot soup in front of her. Real soup, with vegetables and protein and warmth that spread through her body like medicine. She could not remember the last time she had eaten something hot. The human sat across from her. He had told her his name was. He did not say much else. He simply ordered the food, paid for it, and sat down to wait. Tried to eat slowly. She knew that eating too fast after starving could make her sick, but her hands shook as she lifted the spoon to her mouth, and the first taste of real food nearly made her cry. She ate and watched in silence. Other beings in the food stall stared at them. A merchant at a nearby table leaned over to his companion and said something in a low voice. His translator caught the words. "Look at the human with his little stray. They are so strange, these newcomers, picking up trash from the streets like it has value." His companion laughed. "They will learn. Give them a few more decades in the real galaxy. They will learn that sentiment is weakness." Did not seem to hear them, or if he did not react. He simply sat with his hands folded on the table, watching eat. When the bowl was empty, finally looked up at him. The food had given her enough strength to think clearly again, and clear thinking brought clear questions. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her voice was stronger now but still careful. "What do you want from me?" Tilted his head slightly. It was a strange gesture, very human. "What do you think I want?" Had lived in the galaxy long enough to know how things worked. Nothing was free. Every kindness had a price. Every gift came with chains attached. "I do not know," she said honestly. "That is what scares me." Nodded slowly as if this answer made perfect sense to him. "I understand. You have been hurt many times. You expect more hurt. That is reasonable." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small data pad. He pressed some buttons and then turned it around so she could see the screen. "This is a standard employment contract," he said. "I run a cargo ship called the Sparrow. I haul goods between stations in this sector. It is not exciting work, but it is honest. I need a cargo assistant, someone to help with loading, inventory, basic repairs. The job includes a private cabin on the ship, 3 meals a day, and fair wages paid every cycle." Looked at the screen. The words were in standard galactic script, translated automatically for her species. She read through them slowly, waiting to find the trap, the hidden clause, the part where she would sign away her freedom or her body or her life. But the contract was simple and straightforward. It described the job duties clearly. It stated the wages, which were modest but reasonable. It included provisions for rest time, medical care, and the right to end employment with proper notice. It was the kind of contract she had dreamed about finding when she first arrived at this station. The kind of contract that never seemed to exist for refugees. "This is real?" she asked. She could not keep the disbelief out of her voice. "It is real," said. "You can take your time to read it. You can ask questions. And if you decide you do not want the job, that is fine. I will pay for your meal and help you find a shelter for tonight. There are no strings attached to the food." Read the contract again. Then a third time. Her hands trembled as she held the data pad. "Why?" she asked again. "Why would you do this? You do not know me. I am a refugee. I am nobody. I have nothing to offer you that 100 other beings could not offer better." Was quiet for a long moment. He looked down at the table and saw something pass across his face. A shadow, a memory, something painful that he carried with him. "I had a sister," he said finally. She was 5 years younger than me. She got sick when we were living on a colony world at the edge of human space. The colony did not have the medicine she needed, and we did not have the money to get her to a better hospital. He paused, his jaw tightened. People walked past her every day. They saw she was sick. They saw our family was struggling, but they did not stop. They did not help. They looked at her and saw someone who was not worth saving, someone who was nobody. Felt her chest tighten. She recognized this pain. She had felt it herself, standing in the refugee camps, watching her own people die because nobody cared enough to help. "What happened to her?" she asked softly. "She died," said. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of entire worlds. "She was 14 years old. She died in a place where help was possible, but nobody offered it." He looked up and his brown eyes were steady and clear. "I swore to myself after that day that I would never be one of the people who walked past. I would never look at someone suffering and tell myself it was not my problem. That is why I stopped. That is why I am offering you this job. Not because I expect something from you. Not because I want to own you or use you. But because you are a person and you deserve a chance and I have a chance to give. Did not know what to say. In all her time among the alien species of the galaxy, she had never heard anyone speak like this. They believed in profit and power. They believed in the hive and the collective good of their own kind. Neither of them believed in helping strangers simply because it was right. But this human, seemed to believe exactly that. I do not understand your species, said finally. I have heard stories about humans. They say you are dangerous. They say you are emotional and irrational. They say you do not understand how the galaxy works. A small smile crossed face. Maybe they are right. Maybe we do not understand how the galaxy works, or maybe we understand it differently. Maybe we think the galaxy could work better than it does. He gestured toward the data pad in her hands. The choice is yours. I will not pressure you. I will not beg. I will just tell you honestly that the job is real, the offer is genuine, and if you come aboard the Sparrow, you will be treated as crew, not as property, not as charity, as crew. Looked down at the contract one more time. Her whole body still ached from the overseer's kick. Her stomach was full for the first time in days. She was wearing a stranger's jacket because he had given it to her without being asked. Everything in her experience told her this was too good to be true. Everything she had learned about survival in this cold galaxy told her to be suspicious, to wait for the betrayal to protect herself. But she was so tired of being cold, so tired of being afraid, so tired of being alone. Her finger moved across the screen and pressed the signature box. The data pad beeped softly, confirming her acceptance. Nodded and stood up from the table. He held out his hand toward her. It was a human gesture, she realized, a greeting, an offer of connection. Stared at his hand for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took it. His grip was warm and firm. He helped her stand, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Human and stranger, two beings from opposite ends of a vast and uncaring galaxy. Welcome aboard the Sparrow, said. Let us get you home. Home. Had not had a home since her world burned. She did not know if she could trust this human. She did not know if his kindness would last. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in 3 years, she felt something small and fragile growing in her chest. Hope. The Sparrow was not a beautiful ship. It was small, old, and covered with patches and repairs from years of hard use. The paint on its hull was faded, and some of the external lights flickered in ways that probably meant something needed fixing. But walking through its airlock for the first time, it was the most wonderful thing she had ever seen. The interior was clean and warm. Real warmth, not the expensive, artificial warmth of station heating that you had to pay for by the hour. This warmth was free. It surrounded her the moment she stepped inside, and her body, which had been cold for so long, began to relax in ways she did not expect. Gave her a tour of the ship. There was a small cockpit at the front, filled with screens and controls that looked complicated but well-maintained. There was a common area with a table, some chairs, and a cooking unit. There was a cargo bay that took up most of the ship's space, currently half filled with sealed containers waiting for delivery. And there was her cabin. It was tiny, just a bed built into the wall, a small storage space, and a fold-out desk. The door had a lock that worked from the inside, showed her how to use it, and made sure she understood that her privacy was her own. This is yours, he said simply. Nobody enters without your permission, not even me. Stood in the middle of the small room and felt tears building in her eyes. She had not had a door that locked in 3 years. She had not had a space that was truly hers since before the evacuation ships. Thank you, she whispered. The words felt too small for what she was feeling. Just nodded and left her alone to settle in. The first few weeks were hard in ways did not expect. She worked constantly, pushing herself beyond what was necessary or healthy. She woke before and stayed awake after he went asleep. She checked and rechecked her work, terrified that any mistake would give him a reason to abandon her. She barely ate, saving portions of her meals in case the food stopped coming. She slept with her back against the cabin door, ready to flee at the first sign of trouble. Old habits from the refugee camps did not die easily. Noticed, of course he noticed, but he did not confront her about it. He did not demand that she trust him or tell her she was being foolish. He simply continued to be consistent. Every day he greeted her the same way. Every day he paid her wages on time. Every day he shared meals with her and asked about her work without criticism. The first test came 3 weeks into her employment. Was checking inventory in the cargo bay when she dropped a scanner unit. It fell to the metal floor with a terrible cracking sound, and when she picked it up, the screen was dark and the casing was broken. Fear exploded through her body, cold, familiar fear. She had broken something valuable. She had made a mistake. Now the punishment would come. Now she would learn what really was behind his kind words and gentle manner. She stood frozen in the cargo bay, holding the broken scanner, waiting for the shouting to begin. Walked in a few minutes later to check on the delivery schedule. He saw standing perfectly still, her face pale gray with terror, the broken scanner in her trembling hands. "What happened?" he asked. Could not speak. Her throat had closed with fear. She just held out the scanner toward him, waiting for the blow, the anger, the cruelty. Took the scanner and looked at it. He turned it over in his hands, examining the damage. Then he shrugged. "These things are fragile," he said. "I have broken 3 of them myself over the years. Come, I will show you how to repair it. The parts are cheap, and it is a good skill to have." Stared at him. "You are not angry." Angry? Looked genuinely confused. "Why would I be angry? It was an accident. Accidents happen. The important thing is to learn from them and move forward." He sat down at the workbench in the corner of the cargo bay and gestured for her to join him. For the next hour, he walked her through the repair process step by step. He was patient with her questions. He did not get frustrated when she made small mistakes. He simply corrected them and moved on. When the scanner was working again, held it in her hands and felt something shift inside her. Maybe this human was different. Maybe his kindness was not a trick. Maybe, just maybe, she could begin to trust him. The weeks turned into months. Slowly, so slowly it was almost invisible, began to change. She started eating full meals without hiding portions. She started sleeping through the night without waking in panic. She started talking to about things other than work. About her family, about the life she had lost. Listened, he always listened. And sometimes, late at night when they were traveling between stations, he talked too. He told her about Earth, the human, a blue and green planet full of water and life. He told her about growing up in a small city, playing in parks with his sister, learning to repair machines from his father. He told her about how funny she was, how smart, how full of dreams for the future. About the day she got sick and everything changed. About watching her fade away while the world around them did nothing. "I was angry for a long time after she died," said one night. They were sitting in the common area, drinking warm tea while the stars drifted past the windows. "I was angry at the colony, angry at the doctors who could not help, angry at myself for not being able to save her." "What changed?" asked. Was quiet for a moment. "I realized that anger was not helping anyone. It was not bringing back. It was not making the galaxy better. So I decided to do something different. I decided to live the way she would have wanted me to live, to help where I could, to be kind where I could, to never walk past someone who needed help." "Thought about this. Your sister sounds like she was a good person." "She was the best person I ever knew," said. "Better than me, much better." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. then said something she had never expected to say. "I am glad I met you. I was ready to give up that day on station. I had decided that there was no point in trying anymore, and then you stopped." Looked at her with those warm brown eyes. "I am glad I stopped too. You have become a good crew member, more than that. You have become my friend." Friend. The word felt strange and wonderful at the same time. Had not had a friend since before the war. She had not allowed herself to care about anyone because caring meant losing, and she had already lost so much. But sitting here with this human, this strange being from a faraway world, she felt the walls around her heart beginning to crack. "Among my people," she said slowly, "there is a word for what you have done for me. We call it. It means to give life to someone who has lost their own. There is no way to repay. It is a gift that lives forever." Smiled. "That is a beautiful word. But you do not owe me anything. You have worked hard and earned your place here. Everything you have now, you earned yourself." "That is not true," said. "And you know it. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw me when everyone else looked away. I will not forget that, ever." She reached out and placed her hand on his. It was a gesture that would have been impossible for her just months ago. But now, with this human who had changed her life, it felt natural. It felt right. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Turned his hand over and gently squeezed hers. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. "I know how hard that was for you." Outside the windows, the stars continued their endless dance. The sparrow flew on through the darkness, carrying two beings who had found something precious in each other. Not romance, not obligation, something deeper. Family. Prime was a busy station at the center of several major trade routes. Ships of all sizes came and went constantly, carrying goods from one end of the sector to the other. The Sparrow had made deliveries here many times before and knew the docking procedures well. But this time, something felt different. Noticed it first. As they walked through the cargo district toward their delivery point, she saw a group of watching them. They wore expensive clothes and carried themselves with the confidence of beings who were used to getting what they wanted. One of them, a large male with dark green scales and cold eyes, seemed to be leading the group. He stared with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Do you know that?" asked quietly. Looked again and her blood went cold. She did know him. She knew him very well. "His name is," she whispered. "He was a contractor on Relay Station 7, where I was held for 6 months after the evacuation. He used refugees as forced labor. He worked us 18 hours a day with no pay, barely any food, no medical care. Dozens of my people died in his work camps." His jaw tightened. "And you were one of his workers?" "Yes. I escaped when a supply ship came in and left a cargo door open. I hid among the containers and rowed them to station. I never thought I would see him again." Had noticed them watching him. He said something to his companions, and they laughed. Then he began walking toward and with a smile that held no warmth at all. "Well, well," said as he approached. His voice was smooth and oily like poison disguised as honey. "If it is not Little, the one who ran away, I have been looking for you for a long time." Stepped back instinctively, putting between herself and her whole body was trembling with remembered fear. "She does not belong to you," said. His voice was calm but firm. "She is my crew member. She has a legal employment contract." Laughed. "Employment contract. She is a refugee with no status and no rights. Any contract she signed is worthless. She belongs to me. I paid for her transport to my station. I paid for her food and housing. She owes me work and she ran away before paying her debt." "That is slavery," said. "Slavery with extra steps and fancy words, but slavery nonetheless." The smile disappeared from his face. "You do not understand how things work in this galaxy, human. You are new here. You are small and weak. You have no power, no connections, no allies. I am offering you a chance to walk away with your life. Give me thee and you can continue on your way. refuse, and things will become very unpleasant for you. Did not move, he did not look away, he did not show any fear. She is not for sale, he said, she is crew. For a long moment just stared at him, then he shook his head slowly. You humans are fools, he said. Sentimental fools who do not understand the cost of your choices. You will regret this. He turned and walked away, his companions following behind him. Let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. This is bad, is connected. He has money and power and people who will do whatever he tells them. We should leave. We should go far away and never come back to this station. Looked at her steadily. Is that what you want to run? Wanted to say yes. Every survival instinct in her body screamed at her to flee, to hide, to put as much distance as possible between herself and the monster from her past. But she thought about everything had taught her, about standing up instead of backing down, about being worthy of respect instead of accepting abuse. No, she said finally, I am tired of running, but I am afraid. Being afraid is normal, said. Being afraid and standing anyway is courage. We will finish our delivery. We will stay alert. And if tries anything, we will deal with it. They completed their business on Prime, but the feeling of being watched never went away. Sauce people everywhere, at the cargo offices, near their docking bay, outside the food stalls where they stopped to eat. They were not hiding. They wanted to be seen. That night insisted that stay on the ship while he went to complete some final paperwork. She argued, but he was firm. I will be back in 2 hours, he said. Lock the airlock behind me and do not open it for anyone except me. Use the secure comm if you need to reach me. Watched him go with fear growing in her stomach. She locked the airlock as he instructed and tried to focus on inventory reports, but she could not concentrate. Her mind kept returning to and his cold eyes and the terrible things he had done to her people. An hour passed, then another. Did not return. Tried the secure comm, no answer. She tried again, silence. Her fear turned to terror. Something was wrong, she knew it in her bones. She should stay on the ship, that was what had told her. That was the safe choice, the smart choice. But was out there somewhere, possibly hurt, possibly in danger because of her, because he had refused to give her up. Unlocked the airlock and stepped out into the station. The cargo district was quieter at night but not empty. Workers moved between ships, loading and unloading goods. Station security patrols walked their regular routes. Everything looked normal. But knew it was not normal. She moved through the corridors carefully, following the route would have taken to the cargo offices. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her antennae twitched, picking up sounds and vibrations in the air. She found him in a narrow passage between 2 storage buildings. He was on the ground, surrounded by 4 of his enforcers. They had beaten him badly. Blood covered his face, and one of his arms hung at a wrong angle. But he was still fighting. As watched, kicked out at one of the enforcers, catching him in the knee. The stumbled and used the moment to push himself up against the wall. He could barely stand, but he raised his good arm and prepared to fight. Give us the location of one of the enforcers said. Tell us where she is hiding and we will let you go. Spat blood on the ground. I told you already, she is not property, she is crew, and I do not give up my crew. The enforcer raised his weapon. Then you will die for a worthless refugee. What a stupid waste. Did not think, she did not plan, she simply acted. She grabbed a metal bar from a nearby pile of debris and charged at the enforcers from behind. She hit the first one across the back of the head before he even knew she was there. He dropped without a sound. The others turned, surprised by this sudden attack, swung the bar again, catching another enforcer in the arm. He screamed and dropped his weapon. No, shouted, run. But would not run, not this time. She had run from once before and it had led to this moment. She would not run again. The fight was brutal and messy. was small and had no real training, but she was fast and desperate. She ducked under a punch, hit an enforcer in the stomach, rolled away from a kick. Despite his injuries, fought beside her. They stood back to back, facing their enemies together. And then something strange happened. The enforcers began to hesitate. They had expected easy prey, a small human and a weak refugee. They had not expected this wild, furious resistance. They had not expected two beings who would rather die than surrender each other. One of the enforcers looked at the others. "This is not worth it," he said. "Did not pay us enough for this." He turned and ran. The others followed seconds later, leaving their unconscious companion on the ground. Dropped the metal bar and rushed to his side. "You are hurt. We need to get you to a medical station." Laughed weakly. "It looks worse than it is. I have had worse. Help me stand." She helped him up, supporting his weight on her shoulder. Together, they made their way back toward the Sparrow. Station security found them halfway there. Someone had heard the fight and called for help. The officers took one look at its injuries and called for medical assistance. An hour later, was in the station hospital, being treated for broken bones and internal bleeding. A security officer came to take their statements. When described who had attacked them and why, the officer's face hardened. "Has been a problem for a long time," the officer said. "She was a female with serious eyes. But he is careful. He has connections. Nobody has been willing to testify against him." "I will testify," said. "I will tell you everything he did, every crime, every death, all of it." The officer looked at her with something like respect. "That takes courage. His people will not like it." "I know," said, "but I am tired of being afraid." She looked through the hospital window at who was sleeping now, bandages covering his wounds. "He taught me that," she said softly. "He taught me that some things are worth fighting for." 2 years had passed since that night on Prime. Was gone now, locked away in a Union detention facility, waiting to stand trial for crimes against refugees. His testimony had opened the door, and dozens of other survivors had come forward with their own stories. The trade lord who had once seemed untouchable had fallen, brought down by the very people he had tried to treat as worthless. But that was old news now, had more important things to think about. The Sparrow was not the same ship it had been 2 years ago. It was still small, still old, still covered with patches and repairs. But it felt different now. It felt alive in a way it had not before. Because it was not empty anymore. Stood on the cargo deck, watching a young male named carry boxes from the loading platform. He had come to them 6 months ago, thin and hungry and desperate, just as had been. He had asked for work in that same small voice, expecting rejection, expecting nothing. And had done what always did. He had stopped, he had listened, he had offered a chance. Was a good worker now, strong and capable and eager to learn. The fear had faded from his eyes, replaced by confidence and purpose. Remembered when her own eyes had looked like that, lost and hopeless. It seemed like a different life now. "That is the last of it," said, setting down the final box. "Where do you want me next?" "Take a break," told him. "You have been working for 6 hours, go eat something." Looked surprised, then grateful. He was still getting used to the idea that rest was allowed, that food was always available, that he would not be punished for taking care of himself. "Thank you, First Mate," he said, and headed toward the common area. First Mate. That was title now. She had earned it through hard work and dedication, learning everything could teach her about navigation, negotiation, and ship operations. She was no longer just cargo crew. She was second in command of the Sparrow. More importantly, she was family. Climbed the ladder to the upper deck and made her way to the cockpit. Was there, as usual, checking course calculations for their next delivery. He looked up when she entered and smiled. "Everything loaded?" he asked. "Everything loaded," she confirmed. "Is taking a meal break. Finished the engine maintenance this morning. We are ready to depart." nodded and turned back to his screens. Sat in the co-pilot seat beside him, looking out at the stars through the front windows. Was their permanent crew member, a female who had fled an abusive hive that had treated her as property because of a birth defect in one of her arms. She had come to station with nothing, just like. She had stood in the cold, just like. She had begged for work, just like. And she had found the sparrow. There was also a young male who worked as their medic. He had been disowned by his wealthy family for refusing to participate in their exploitative trading practices. He had chosen poverty and honesty over wealth and cruelty, and his family had cast him out for it. Now he had a new family, a strange family made up of beings from different worlds and different species, but a family nonetheless. Word had spread through the refugee networks about the Sparrow and its human captain, the ship that treated its crew fairly, the captain who saw people instead of problems, the place where the lost and the broken could find a second chance. Not everyone who came could stay. The ship was small and resources were limited, but did what they could. They fed the hungry. They connected people with job opportunities. They had tribunals against those who exploited refugees. They made a difference, one life at a time. I got another message from the community on Station 12, said. They want to know if we can take on 2 more refugees, a mother and daughter. Their situation is bad. Sighed, we do not have room for permanent crew right now. I know, but I thought maybe we could transport them to the settlement on its old station. The colony there has been accepting refugees. It is not perfect, but it is safe. Considered this, then nodded. We can make a detour. It will add 3 days to our route, but we can afford it. Felt warmth spread through her chest. This was what she loved about. He never said no when there was a way to say yes. He never turned away from suffering when he had the power to help. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me, it was your idea. He paused, then looked at her with a strange expression. You have changed a lot since that day on station. Thought about the person she had been, starving, freezing, ready to give up. That felt like a stranger now, someone she had known once but could barely remember. You changed me, she said. You gave me a chance to become someone different, someone better. No, said firmly. You were always this person. You just needed the opportunity to discover it. Everything you have become, you became through your own strength and choices. I just opened a door. You walked through it yourself. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars drift past. The Sparrow hummed around them, its engines running smoothly thanks to careful maintenance. Somewhere in the back, could hear and talking and laughing. Do you ever think about going back to Earth? Asked. Was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, I think about the places where I used to play, the food our mother used to cook, the sound of rain on a real roof instead of metal plates. He paused. But I do not think I could stay there anymore. I have been out here too long. I have seen too much. The galaxy is full of suffering, but it is also full of possibility, full of people like you who just need someone to see them. Nodded slowly. I used to think the galaxy was cold and cruel, and it is in many ways, but I have learned that there is warmth here too, just not where you expect to find it. Where did you find it? Asked. Turned to look at him. This strange human who had changed her life forever. This being who had stopped when everyone else walked past. This friend, this brother, this family she had never expected to find. I found it in you, she said simply, and in the people you have gathered around you, and in myself once you helped me see that it was there. Reached out and took her hand, just as he had done that first day in the food stall on station. The galaxy is changing, he said, slowly, sometimes so slowly it is hard to see. But every time someone helps a stranger, every time someone chooses kindness over cruelty, it changes a little bit more. That is what humans believe. That is what I believe. And now it is what you believe too. Squeezed his hand. My people have a saying. We say that stars are born from darkness. That light comes from the coldest, emptiest places. I never understood what it meant until I met you." "What does it mean?" "It means that hope can come from anywhere, even from the worst moments of our lives, even from the deepest cold. All it takes is one spark, one person who refuses to look away, one act of kindness in a universe full of cruelty." She looked out at the stars again, billions of points of light in an endless ocean of darkness. "You were my spark, and now I get to be a spark for others. That is the gift you gave me, not just survival, not just a job, but purpose, meaning, a reason to keep going." Smiled. It was the same warm smile he had given her on that first day, when he had draped his jacket over her shoulders and asked when she had last eaten. "You know what the best part is," he said. "What?" "The spark spreads. We'll help someone else someday. We'll help someone else. We'll help someone else. And they will help someone else. It keeps going forever, each act of kindness creating more kindness." He activated the ship's engines, and the Sparrow began to move, leaving the station behind and heading toward the stars. "That is how we change the galaxy," said, "not with weapons or power or wealth, but with compassion, with connection, with the simple refusal to walk past someone who is suffering." Watched the stars grow brighter as they accelerated toward their destination. She thought about the mother and daughter waiting for them on Station 12, about the life they would find at the settlement, about the hope that would grow in their hearts when they realized they were not alone anymore. She thought about the cold streets of Station, where she had once begged for anything, where she had been invisible to everyone except one strange human who had stopped when no one else would. She thought about the journey from that moment to this one, the fear, the trust, the growth, the battle, the healing, all of it leading here to this cockpit, to this family, to this life she had never imagined possible. "Thank you," she said one more time, "for everything." Just smiled and flew on toward the stars. And somewhere in the vast, cold galaxy, warmth continued to spread, one small act of kindness at a time.